For millions of television viewers in the 1950s, the show I Love Lucy was more than just a comedy. It was a weekly moment of laughter that brought families together around their television sets. The stars of the show, including Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, became household names. But the show also had two other characters who played a very important role in its success, Fred and Ethel Mertz. These characters were the landlords and close friends of Lucy and Ricky, and their constant arguments, funny comments, and clever schemes made them unforgettable. Fred Mertz was played by William Frawley, while Ethel Mertz was played by Vivian Vance. On screen, the two actors had amazing chemistry. They bickered like an old married couple, but they also showed moments of loyalty and affection that made audiences love them. Their scenes together often became some of the funniest moments in the show. Viewers believed that Fred and Ethel had been married for many years and were simply used to teasing and arguing with each other. However, behind the scenes, the relationship between the actors was very different. Instead of friendly teasing, there was real anger and resentment. In fact, their feud became one of the most famous rivalries in television history. The tension between them was so strong that many people who worked on the show could feel it every time the actors were together. Yet despite their personal dislike for one another, they continued to perform brilliantly in front of the cameras, proving that they were both talented professionals. Their ability to hide their real feelings and deliver hilarious performances helped make I Love Lucy one of the most successful television shows of all time. But the story of their feud did not end when the cameras stopped rolling. Years later, when William Frawley passed away in 1966 after suffering a heart attack on Hollywood Boulevard, a surprising story began to circulate about Vivian Vance. According to several accounts, when Vance heard the news while dining with friends, she raised a glass and said, "Champagne for everyone." This shocking reaction left many people wondering why she would respond in such a way to the death of someone she had worked with for so many years. To understand why this moment happened and why their hatred ran so deep, we must go back to the beginning of their lives and careers, long before they ever appeared together on the same television set. William Frawley's journey to fame began many decades before television became popular. Born in 1887, he grew up in a time when live entertainment was one of the main ways people enjoyed comedy and music. As a young man, Frawley became involved in vaudeville, a popular form of stage entertainment that included comedy sketches, singing, dancing, and many other types of performances. Vaudeville was known for producing talented performers who could entertain audiences with quick wit and strong personalities, and Frawley quickly proved that he belonged on the stage. He had a natural ability to make people laugh, and his gruff voice and expressive face made him perfect for comedic roles. During the early years of his career, he traveled around the country performing in theaters and learning the skills that would later make him a successful actor. Over time, he moved into Broadway productions, where he appeared in several stage shows. By the 1920s and 1930s, Frawley had already built a reputation as a dependable character actor. Unlike leading men who played glamorous heroes, character actors were known for portraying memorable supporting roles, often adding humor and personality to a story. Frawley's talent allowed him to appear in many different types of productions, including comedies, dramas, and musicals. As the film industry began to grow in Hollywood, he slowly moved into movies as well. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, he appeared in dozens of films, sometimes playing tough or grumpy characters who delivered sharp and funny lines. His performances made him a familiar face to movie audiences, even if he was not always the star of the film. However, by the early 1950s, his career seemed to be slowing down. Hollywood studios were focusing on younger actors, and many older performers struggled to find steady work. At the time, television was still a new form of entertainment, and few people realized how powerful it would become. When the opportunity to appear in a new television sitcom called I Love Lucy came along, it changed Frawley's life forever. The producers were looking for someone to play Fred Mertz, the grumpy but funny landlord who lived in the same apartment building as Lucy and Ricky. Frawley believed he was perfect for the role, and he boldly contacted Lucille Ball to ask for the opportunity. His confidence impressed the creators of the show, and despite concerns about his reputation for heavy drinking, he was given the role. What no one realized at the time was that the casting of Fred Mertz would not only revive William Frawley's career, but would also lead to one of the most famous personal conflicts in television history. While William Frawley had spent decades building his career in vaudeville, theater, and film, the path taken by Vivian Vance was quite different. Born in 1909 in Cherryvale, Kansas, Vance grew up in a small town where opportunities in the entertainment world seemed very far away. From an early age, however, she showed a strong interest in performing. She loved acting and singing, and she often participated in school plays and local performances. Like many young performers of that era, she dreamed of leaving her hometown and making a name for herself on the stage. Eventually, she moved to New York City, which at the time was the center of the American theater world. In New York, Vance began working in Broadway productions during the 1930s. At first, she performed in chorus lines and smaller supporting roles, but her talent and dedication quickly helped her move up the ladder. She developed strong skills in comedy, timing, and stage presence, which made her stand out among other performers. One of the key moments in her early career came when she worked as an understudy for the famous singer and actress Ethel in the musical Anything Goes. Being around such experienced performers helped Vance learn how to command the stage and deliver powerful performances. Over time, she appeared in several Broadway shows, building a reputation as a capable and versatile actress. Despite the success on stage, however, Hollywood did not immediately welcome her with open arms. When she moved to California in the late 1940s, hoping to expand her career into films, she found only limited opportunities. She appeared in a few movies, including small roles in films like The Secret Fury and The Blue Veil, but these parts did not bring her the fame she had hoped for. At that moment in her life, she was still searching for the big break that would truly launch her career. That opportunity came when she was invited to audition for a new television sitcom being created by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. The show would soon become known as I Love Lucy. At first, Vance was unsure whether she even wanted the role. The character she was being asked to play was Ethel Mertz, a slightly older, practical woman who worked closely with Lucy in many comedic schemes. Vance worried that the character might make her appear older than she really was. Still, when she auditioned, her natural comedic talent impressed the producers immediately. They saw something special in her ability to balance humor with warmth, and she was offered the role that would change her life forever. The moment Vivian Vance joined the cast of I Love Lucy, the pieces were in place for one of the most memorable comedy teams in television history. On screen, the relationship between Ethel and Fred Mertz quickly became a favorite among viewers. Fred, played by William Frawley, was a penny-pinching, grumpy landlord who often complained about money and tried to avoid spending a single extra dollar. Ethel, on the other hand, was more lively and expressive. She often joined Lucy in her wild plans, and she was not afraid to challenge Fred when he became too stubborn or unreasonable. Their constant arguments were filled with clever jokes and playful insults that made audiences laugh every week. To viewers at home, the pair seemed like a perfectly matched comedic couple who had spent many years learning how to tease each other without ever crossing the line. But behind the cameras, the truth was much less friendly. The tension between Vance and Frawley began almost immediately after they started working together. One of the main reasons for the conflict was their large age difference. Frawley was more than 20 years older than Vance, and she reportedly felt uncomfortable playing the wife of someone she believed looked old enough to be her father. According to stories shared by people who worked on the show, Vance once made a comment saying that no audience would believe they were married because he looked so much older than she did. Unfortunately for her, Frawley eventually heard about these remarks. He was known for having a strong personality and a long memory when it came to insults. The moment he learned what Vance had said, he reportedly became deeply offended and never truly forgave her. From that point forward, their relationship was filled with tension and resentment. Frawley believed that Vance looked down on him and did not respect his long career in entertainment. Vance, meanwhile, found Frawley's rough personality and blunt manner difficult to tolerate. The two actors rarely socialized with each other when they were not filming scenes. In fact, many members of the production team noticed that they often avoided speaking to each other unless it was absolutely necessary for their work. Yet, when the cameras started rolling, something remarkable happened. Despite their real-life dislike, the two performers delivered some of the funniest and most believable arguments ever seen on television. Their scenes felt authentic because the tension between them was not entirely acting. In a strange way, their personal conflict actually helped create the unforgettable dynamic that made Fred and Ethel such beloved characters in television history. As the success of I Love Lucy continued to grow during the 1950s, audiences around the world fell more and more in love with the characters of Fred and Ethel Mertz. Week after week, viewers watched the hilarious adventures of Lucy and her best friend Ethel as they tried new schemes, often with the reluctant involvement of their husbands. Fred, played by William Frawley, delivered sarcastic remarks and stubborn reactions that made his character both funny and memorable. Ethel, portrayed by Vivian Vance, balanced his grumpy personality with energy, wit, and clever comebacks. Together, they formed one of the most entertaining supporting couples in television history. Many fans even believe that the chemistry between Fred and Ethel sometimes matched or exceeded that of Lucy and Ricky themselves. Their arguments felt natural, their jokes landed perfectly, and their teamwork in Lucy's crazy plans created some of the show's most unforgettable scenes. But the irony behind all of the success was that the actors themselves were not enjoying the partnership nearly as much as the audience. Off-screen, the tension between Frawley and Vance remained very real. According to several members of the production crew, the two actors rarely spoke to each other when they were not performing a scene. They would arrive on set, rehearse their lines, film the episode, and then leave without spending any time together. Unlike other cast members who often socialize after work, Frawley and Vance prefer to keep their distance. Their professional behavior helped the show run smoothly, but the lack of friendship was obvious to people working behind the scenes. Despite this cold relationship, both actors understood the importance of the show's success. They knew that millions of viewers loved their characters and expected them to deliver the same level of comedy every week. For that reason, they continued to perform with dedication and skill whenever the cameras were rolling. In many ways, their ability to act professionally despite their personal feelings became a sign of their talent and experience in the entertainment industry. However, the resentment between them did not disappear over time. Instead, it slowly grew stronger as the years passed. One moment that clearly showed how deep the conflict had become occurred when producers began discussing the idea of creating a spin-off series centered on Fred and Ethel. By the mid-1950s, I Love Lucy had become one of the most successful television shows in the United States. The popularity of the characters led the producers to consider expanding the story by giving Fred and Ethel their own program. The idea seemed logical. Viewers already loved the couple, and a new show focused on their adventures might attract a large audience. When Desi Arnaz approached the actors about the possibility, William Frawley was reportedly excited by the opportunity. A new series could provide him with steady work and allow him to continue playing a character that audiences adored. Vivian Vance, however, reacted very differently. She strongly opposed the idea and quickly rejected the proposal. Officially, she explained that the characters of Fred and Ethel worked best when they were interacting with Lucy and Ricky. Without the central pair of the show, she believed the comedy might not be as strong. But many people believe that the real reason for her refusal was much simpler. Vance did not want to spend even more years working closely with Frawley. Their relationship had become so uncomfortable that the thought of building an entire show around their partnership felt impossible to her. As a result, the spin-off idea was quietly abandoned before it could move forward. For Frawley, this decision was deeply disappointing. He had hoped that the project would give him another major success in television. Some reports suggest that he blamed Vance for destroying the opportunity, and that his bitterness toward her grew even stronger after that moment. Meanwhile, Vance seemed relieved that she would not have to continue working alongside him once I Love Lucy eventually ended. This failed spin-off proposal became one of the most important turning points in their relationship, proving that the tension between them was not just a small disagreement, but a serious and lasting conflict. It also showed how personal feelings between actors can sometimes influence important decisions behind the scenes of a major television production. When the original run of I Love Lucy finally came to an end in 1957, it marked the conclusion of one of the most successful and influential television programs in history. For 6 seasons, audiences have watched the hilarious adventures of Lucy, Ricky, Fred, and Ethel, laughing at their wild plans and unforgettable misunderstandings. The show had turned Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz into international stars, and it had also given William Frawley and Vivian Vance some of the most recognizable roles of their careers. Even though the series officially ended, the characters remained extremely popular with viewers through reruns and later specials. However, for the actors themselves, the end of the show represented something else entirely. It meant that they could finally move on to new opportunities and, in the case of Frawley and Vance, finally stop working together. After spending years performing as a married couple on screen, both actors were ready to pursue different paths. Their professional relationship had always been strained, and once the show was over, there was little reason for them to remain in contact. For William Frawley, the end of I Love Lucy did not mean retirement. Even though he was already in his 70s, he was still eager to continue acting. Soon after the show ended, he was offered an important role in a new television sitcom called My Three Sons. In this series, he played the character of Bubba O'Casey, a warm but occasionally grumpy grandfather figure who helped raise three boys. The role allowed Frawley to show a softer side of his personality while still keeping the humor that audiences loved. His performance quickly made him a fan favorite once again, proving that he still had the ability to entertain viewers even after many decades in the business. Meanwhile, Vivian Vance also continued her career in television. She remained close friends with Lucille Ball, and when Ball created another comedy series called The Lucy Show in the early 1960s, Vance joined the cast to play Lucy's friend and roommate. The partnership between the two actresses worked very well, because they genuinely enjoyed each other's company and shared a natural comedic rhythm. Their scenes together brought back some of the charm that audiences had loved in I Love Lucy. However, one important detail showed just how serious the feud between Vance and Frawley had become. Vance reportedly insisted on including a clause in her contract that would prevent Frawley from appearing on the show as a guest star. This decision made it clear that she had no interest in ever working with him again. Even though years had passed since their time on I Love Lucy, the bitterness between them had not faded. During the years that followed, stories about the feud between William Frawley and Vivian Vance continued to circulate throughout Hollywood. People who had worked on I Love Lucy often shared memories of the tension they had witnessed on set. Some described how the actors would avoid eye contact between scenes, while others remembered moments when sharp comments were exchanged. Frawley, in particular, had a reputation for speaking his mind without worrying about whether his words might offend someone. On several occasions, he reportedly made harsh remarks about Vance when speaking to friends or colleagues. One famous story tells of a moment when a visitor on the set of My Three Sons asked Frawley what Vivian Vance was really like in real life. Without hesitation, he allegedly replied with an insult that shocked everyone present. For Frawley, the resentment he felt toward his former co-star seemed impossible to forget. At the same time, Vivian Vance did not appear eager to repair their relationship either. She rarely spoke publicly about Frawley, but when the subject had arisen, her comments suggested that she had little affection for him. The long history of disagreements between them had left a deep mark on both actors. What makes their story particularly fascinating is the contrast between their real lives and their on-screen performances. While they struggled to tolerate each other off camera, their characters continued to entertain audiences long after the show ended. Reruns of I Love Lucy allowed new generations of viewers to discover the humor of Fred and Ethel, often without knowing anything about the personal conflict behind those performances. For many fans, the couple represented the perfect example of a long-married pair who knew exactly how to push each other's buttons while still caring about one another. The idea that the actors behind those roles actually disliked each other so strongly seemed almost unbelievable. Yet this strange combination of professional success and personal tension would become a central part of the legend surrounding the show. And as the years passed, the story would take an even more dramatic turn with the unexpected death of William Frawley in 1966, an event that would once again bring the complicated relationship between the two actors into the spotlight. By the mid-1960s, William Frawley had already spent more than half a century working in the entertainment industry. From his early days in vaudeville to his long list of film roles and his famous television performances, he had built a career that very few actors could match. His work on I Love Lucy had made him a familiar face to millions of viewers, and his later role on My Three Sons had given him another chance to entertain audiences in a completely different way. However, by the time he reached his late 70s, the long years of hard work and a difficult lifestyle had begun to take a serious toll on his health. Frawley had a well-known reputation for enjoying alcohol, and although he had managed to keep his professional responsibilities under control during the filming of I Love Lucy, the habits of his earlier life continued to affect him as he grew older. In the early 1960s, his health began to decline, and the producers of My Three Sons eventually had to replace him when it became clear that he could no longer keep up with the demanding schedule of television production. Even after leaving the show, Frawley remained a recognizable figure in Hollywood. People often spotted him walking along the famous streets of Los Angeles, greeting fans or visiting familiar restaurants and bars. Despite his age and declining health, he still carried the strong personality that had defined his career. Friends described him as tough, direct, and sometimes stubborn, but they also recognized his deep knowledge of the entertainment world and the dedication he had shown throughout his life. On March 3, 1966, only a few days after celebrating his 79th birthday, Frawley was walking along Hollywood Boulevard when he suddenly collapsed. The cause was a heart attack, and although help arrived quickly, he passed away shortly afterward. News of his death spread rapidly through the entertainment industry, and many of his former colleagues expressed sadness at the loss of such an experienced performer. For many people who had grown up watching I Love Lucy, the death of the man who played Fred Mertz felt like the end of an important chapter in television history. Tributes soon began appearing in newspapers and industry publications, praising his long career and the memorable characters he had created on stage and screen. Among those who remembered Frawley after his passing were several of his former co-stars. Desi Arnaz, who had helped bring him on to I Love Lucy, reportedly placed a heartfelt tribute in the entertainment trade papers to honor his old colleague. Arnaz's message was simple but meaningful, reflecting the respect he still had for the actor who had helped make the show such a success. Lucille Ball also spoke warmly about Frawley, praising his talent as a character actor and recognizing the important role he had played in the series. Even though there had occasionally been disagreements during the years they worked together, Ball understood how much Frawley had contributed to the program that had changed television forever. At his funeral, several figures from the entertainment world gathered to say their final goodbyes. Among them were actors and producers who had worked with him during different stages of his career. The event served as a reminder that, despite his sometimes rough personality, Frawley had earned the respect of many people in the industry. Yet, while most reactions to his death were respectful and somber, a surprising story soon began to circulate about the reaction of Vivian Vance, the woman who had spent years playing his on-screen wife. According to several reports, Vance was dining with friends at a restaurant when someone informed her that Frawley had died earlier that day. The story claims that instead of responding with sadness, she raised her glass and announced, "Champagne for everyone." To many people who later heard this tale, the moment seemed shocking and even cruel. Celebrating the death of a former colleague was not something most people would expect, especially when the two had shared such a famous partnership on television. However, those who knew about the long and bitter feud between Vance and Frawley were less surprised. Their relationship had been strained almost from the beginning, and years of arguments and resentment had left deep emotional scars. For Vance, hearing the news may have represented the final end of a chapter in her life that had been filled with tension and frustration. Some historians and television experts have pointed out that stories like this can sometimes grow larger over time, especially when they involve famous figures and dramatic rivalries. Whether the champagne moment happened exactly as described or was later exaggerated, it nevertheless became one of the most widely repeated anecdotes about the feud between the two actors. The image of Vivian Vance raising a glass at the news of William Frawley's death captured the imagination of fans and helped cement their rivalry as one of the most famous off-screen conflicts in television history. After the death of William Frawley in 1966, the spotlight slowly shifted toward the life and career of Vivian Vance. For years, she had been best known as the energetic and loyal friend Ethel Mertz on I Love Lucy, but her life after